going to show you how to make a 3-tier rainbow drip cake. So what I've already prepared are 3 different sized cakes, and I've crumb coated them and kept them in the fridge for a good half an hour so they're nice and firm and ready for the rainbow icing on top. So I've got an 8-inch, a 6-inch and a 4-inch cake here. And I've also got 5 different colours of Swiss meringue buttercream. So I like to choose the order that I'm going to pipe in, and naturally I separate the pink and purple and the blue and green. So you can pipe whatever order you would like, that's just my preference. And what I'm going to do is keep to the same order throughout the 3 tiers, so it just has a more consistent look to it. So what I'm going to do is start off with the blue and go around the bottom of this 8-tier cake. And you do have to be conscious that you've got 5 colours to use on the single tier. So roughly in your head, divide the cake into 5. So I'm kind of going round 1.5 times with 1 colour. When you get to the 3rd colour, you should be halfway up the cake. And depending on what you're doing on the top, depends on how you fill the top. So I'm going to cover the whole top with the drips. So I'm not going to worry about putting a solid layer of buttercream on the top, but I do want to sharpen the corners as much as possible. So I'm just going to go around the outside with a thin layer of buttercream. And once I've done that, I'll get my palette knife and push the buttercream over the edge and make that surface really nice and flat. And now it's time to scrape round and make those colours smooth. So as you scrape round, all the holes and air bubbles and gaps will start to fill in. So it's nice and straight, but what is happening is that it's really cold at the moment, and you can probably hear how blocked up I am as well. The buttercream is actually getting a little bit too cold, and the more I'm going over it, the more air bubbles appear rather than the less air bubbles. So I'm going to show you a little trick in case that happens to you. Get a blowtorch, or you can use hot water. You want to heat up the scraper very slightly. Just going to gently go over the side of the scraper. Again, you can run it under hot water if you don't have a blowtorch, and then go around the cake again. And the heat will slightly soften the buttercream as you go over it, and will help fill those little air bubbles. So when you're happy with the coating, you can clean off the corners now, or do what I'm doing, which is putting it back in the fridge, waiting for the buttercream to harden, and then slice off the corners to get a real nice sharp edge. So I'm basically going to do the exact same thing to the 6-inch and the 4-inch, and then leave them in the fridge until the buttercream is hard. So once your second layer has had enough time in the fridge, the buttercream should be nice and firm. So I'm going to use my palette knife and cut off all this excess to create a really sharp edge. And this only works when the buttercream is completely cold. And I'll give it another scrape round very lightly just to tidy up those corners. So that is really nice and flat, and the corners are really sharp. So now I'm going to prepare the 8-inch to support the 6-inch that's going to go on next. And for that, I'm going to put in some straws. So I'll put in about 5 in this layer. Because it's a 3-tier cake, so it's quite heavy on top, I want it to have maximum support. Trim them to size. So I'm not actually going to put a central dowel in this cake like I did on my other stacking cake video, because it's not going to be travelling very far and I'm going to be taking it. So the central dowel is just an extra security when you're delivering a stacked cake, to make sure it doesn't wobble over. So if you're giving it to a courier or directly to a client and you don't 100% trust them with a big cake, then put the central dowel in, and it's on my stacking cake tutorial on my channel. So I'm going to go and get the 6-inch cake and put it on top of the 8-inch. So while the 6-inch cake is still cold from the fridge, I'm going to place it on the 8-inch now, because it's a lot easier to do that when the cake is cold. And what I forgot to mention is that the 6 and 4-inch is on its own sized cake board. So I've got a 6-inch cake board underneath this one. So when I lift it up, I'm holding a cake board, not the cake. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of buttercream on the surface. It's probably better to do this not holding a cake at the same time, and then place this on. Okay, to press it down. So what you can do is that if there are gaps around the bottom, you can get the same colour buttercream, so in this case blue, go around and applying a small amount to the very bottom, and then press it in with a palette knife, and then scrape any excess away. And that fills the gap in between those two tiers. And now I'm going to trim off the corners like I did with the 8-inch. So this time I'm putting 3 straws in the top. So this time I'm going to put some buttercream before I take up the tier. And if you need to, fill the very bottom gaps. And clean off the corners. So, it's ready to be dripped. You may be thinking why I didn't drip it before I stacked it. So I actually used to do this. I used to put one layer on, put the drips on, and then put the other layer on. But because the ganache was wet, the layers kept sliding around a bit, so I'd rather pipe it on after I've stacked the cake, and I think it's neater as well. So I'm not going to put this back in the fridge because I don't want it too cold, otherwise it will set the ganache too much. The cakes are still cold from being in the fridge just before, so I'm going to leave it like this, prepare my ganache, and get dripping. So I've just made my ganache by heating my cream, putting the chocolate in, letting it melt, and mixing it until it's really silky consistency. And now I'm going to transfer it into a piping bag. And I'm actually going to close it with a little clip. So I'm just going to cut the very end of the piping bag. Now, the only issue I have with piping on ganache is that it can look too uniform and not natural enough. So I like to apply different pressures as I'm going around the cake. Very carefully, on with the ganache, and just let it fall over the sides. And I'm just going to use a palette knife to just go over the very top and fill in those gaps in between the 6-inch and the edge of the 8-inch. And then repeat for the next layer and then the very top as well. So the cake's fully dripped, turned out really nicely. I'm going to leave this for about 20 minutes for the ganache to set slightly before I start decorating. Don't put it straight in the fridge because the ganache can start cracking. So it's best to leave it out unless it's boiling hot, but it definitely isn't at the moment. So the ganache is going to set quite quickly. So yeah, 20 minutes, I'll get all my decorations together and then finish off the cake. So now it's time to decorate this wonderfully colourful cake. I've got some multicoloured macarons here, some meringue kisses, chocolate ruffles, mini Chubba Chub lollies and some mini Oreos. And what I've also done is put all the leftover buttercream that I decorated the cake with into a piping bag with a star tip nozzle, and I'll use that to decorate too. I do have some edible flowers, but I'm not going to put them on the cake just yet. Because the ganache is still wet, I don't want the flowers to be soaked with ganache, and the cake's not being displayed until tomorrow anyway. So they will be going on the cake. So if you do want to see what the final cake looks like with the flowers on, then head over to my Instagram at George's Cakes. Now in the meantime, I'm going to start piping on some decorations with the buttercream and then put the other decorations on top. So piping on extra buttercream like I'm doing not only looks good, but it can also hide little air pockets that you may not have smoothed out properly. So it's a great way to hide any mistakes. But of course it adds to the decoration. So I'll save a bit of buttercream to add on at the end, and I'm going to go on with the larger decorations. And now for the fun part, the little lollipops popping out of the decorations. A few more little bits of buttercream details. And of course some gold leaf. And there you have a ridiculously colourful 3-tier drip cake. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Remember, you can always put a central dowel in, and go ahead and watch my second cake tutorial if you haven't already, and it explains the best way to do that. But this is going to sit in the fridge overnight, so it's going to be really solid and secure for transport. I wouldn't go taller than this without a central dowel as well if you are transporting tiered cakes. So give it a try. If you do, tag me at George's Cakes on Instagram. And in the meantime, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, like this video and share it with all your friends. I'm looking forward to seeing your creations, and we'll see you very soon.